We're in McCormick County, South Carolina, on the shores of Lake Thurman, and I am with Zimbabwean-born and world-traveled new friend, Barb Hinkle. Barb, how did you design this landscape to suit your family's needs?
The landscape, I started with an easy-to-maintain garden, but being who I am, I get carried away. And I wanted to have a Mediterranean look because we lived in Italy and just loved the whole environment. The buildings and the gardens and the plants always looked so luxuriant, and I kept having that image in my mind to try and emulate that.
When you came here, you said you took one look at the soil and said, oh my goodness, I've got to do something before I put plants in the ground.
And
so what did you do?
That is very true. I enriched it. I had a truckload of topsoil brought in, and particularly in my courtyard, I really nourished the soil with the topsoil and mulch. And over the years, just kept adding it. And my secret weapon are worms. I go down to the fishing store and buy a little packet of fishing worms, and we put them in the ground, my granddaughters and I, and they multiply, which is wonderful.
And as I look around, I see so many treasures. Of course, you are very fortunate here. You have the cooler temperatures that let you have peonies, which are so
Yes.
lovely. And yet you also have agaves, and that is a very unusual one. Tell me about it.
I don't know what to tell you other than I love it. It's just a beautiful, exciting plant. It's quite vicious with its thorns. And I bought it a couple of years ago. It was rather expensive, so I only bought one. And it's created all these little pups, which have been promised to friends.
Oh, well, don't give them all away. They certainly help set the scene. And as we go down, we see things that remind us of the Italian landscape. We see gravel used and a small amount of turf. And then as we get towards the house, oh, what joyful things. The vertical accents are so much fun. So tell me about those.
I started off with these skyrocket junipers, and they fit perfectly into the landscape because they don't get too tall, they don't get too wide. And then I thought I really need a Mediterranean cypress because this is a Mediterranean style house. And that's where I bought several of the Mediterranean cypress. Unfortunately, this winter the deer enjoyed them as well. And I shall fire my dog, who's supposed to keep the deer at bay.
And then towards the house, you've pruned things up to give us that umbrella look, and you've used a lot of vines. And you said that from your kitchen window, often you have a very beautiful view.
I do. I enjoy it. And the vines that are growing over the kitchen window and the front door and over the arbor are the Lady Banks rose, the yellow. And it's supposed to have 30 to 60,000 blooms on it, and I can believe it. It was just stunning this spring.
And even though that one's over, in a corner of the house is a remarkable bloomer. Tell me about that rose.
This is a red, I call it a Lady Banks, but it's not, as I was corrected at the nursery. But it does the same climbing aspect as the Lady Banks. I like it better than the yellow because it's bloomed all last year.
You told me it just goes on.
It just goes on and on.
on
And
and
behind
on.
me I have a trellis that I've started to grow it up, and it's doing beautifully. I put it in pots, and I just love this rose.
I love it too.
It's gorgeous.
And I think that in the afternoons or the evening when it's time to have a glass of Italian wine, you have created an outdoor dining room. Tell me about that.
I have. It first started off with the breezeway and growing grapes up and over the arbor. And that worked perfectly. That was the look I was trying to get, was the vines with the grapes dripping down and the coolness and the shade. And we eat out every night, weather permitting, whether it's on the breezeway or on the back deck or in the courtyard. Because now it's just my husband and I. We enjoy sitting at that little table with the twinkling lights and, as you said, enjoying a good glass of Italian wine.
And on that back deck, you have eating spaces there. You have beautiful, wonderfully blooming, colorful plants. And you get to look down on another little area that you've created a garden in.
Yeah.
Another small amount of grass surrounded by more plants. Tell me how that area came into being.
Well, the water features. I love to hear the sound of running water. And that's where doing a water feature at the back and also in my courtyard was a necessity, simply to add to the ambiance of the moment. And ponds and water features are hard work, but it's worth it.
And then, of course, you've left a wonderful natural area, partially because the Corps controls some of that, but
Correct.
also you said you love the transition into the woodlands.
Yes. And this piece of property has all these little gullies and interesting trees. It spoke to me when we came and looked at the property. It's just a magical piece of property.
Well, Barb, I think that you also listened very carefully and heard nature speak to you.
Thank you.
And created a wonderful place for your family and for the natural elements around you. Thank you so much for letting us be here today.
Thank you for coming. It was my pleasure.